Well, hello, and how are you today? I have a great wine recipe for you that I'm creating today. It's not one of my creations, I have to say. This is a recipe from someone's granddad, and it's a really old, traditional British recipe. This is a recipe for poor man's brandy, otherwise known as Cumberland Brandy. Cumberland being a region in England that used to be really big on potato growing. And for that very reason, this wine is a potato-based wine. I have done other potato wines, you can check them out up by here, but this one does have a twist. This wine does resemble brandy. So let's get into how you make it. Good job. Right then. I do have a copy of the handwritten recipe, and it's all in pounds. Pounds are brilliant. I used to use pounds an awful lot for all my cooking and all my recipes, but then I merged over to kilos because that's something more universal. So this recipe will be done in pounds, but I will put a link to my blog where there's a full recipe in both pounds and kilograms. The first ingredient you need to make this poor man's brandy, Cumberland Brandy, is potatoes. About £2 worth. If you're using potatoes from your garden and they're covered in soil, give them a scrub first, but these are clean already. So just chop them up into chunks and deposit your chopped up potatoes into a clean fermentation bucket. With your £2 of potatoes, that's about a kilo of potatoes added to your bucket. The next thing is to add some chopped up raisins. A lot of older recipes do say to add raisins to your wines because the raisins add a good amount of sugar, body and vinosity, and also a bit of colour to the wines. There's a video all about raisins and why and when you should add them up by here, just if you want a bit more background information into raisins and their uses in home brew and winemaking. So pour in your £2 of chopped up raisins. And then to your fermentation bucket, you want to be adding £1 of crushed wheat. I'm using malted wheat because it's what I have from brewing beer. Oh, it smells so malty. You could use crushed wheat, malted wheat, it all does the same type of thing. And that is, it brings out a very strong, rich, delicious flavour to the wine. It makes it brandy-like, hence the reason it's called Cumberland Brandy or poor man's brandy. And again, a lot of traditional older recipes call for the addition of wheat to your wine. It gives it that body, that flavour, that uniqueness. It makes it purely a traditional country wine. I really do rate wheat in wine. You can make a pure wheat wine as well, which I'll probably do in another video. Anyway, add your wheat to your bucket with the potatoes and the raisins in. Pour in £1 worth. The next thing the recipe calls for is the juice and the rind of an orange and a lemon. A lot of people say that the skin of citrus fruit can leave a bit of a bitter taste to the wine. I'm unconvinced. I have never actually been able to notice the bitterness from the rind of an orange or lemon in a wine. If it does impart a bit of bitterness, if it does impart a bit of bitterness, especially to this poor man's brandy, it will get lost amongst the rich flavour of the potatoes and the wheat. So chunk your orange, squeeze it in, add the rind as well, and also the lemon and the lemon rind. The recipe from Alex's granddad says to add the sugar in 3 days' time. However, I want to add the sugar now. I think there's going to be no difference between adding the sugar now or in 3 days. So I will be adding the sugar now, not in 3 days as the traditional recipe says, because I'm making the wine now and I want to do it my way. Be creative with the recipes. If you're following a recipe and you want to make an alteration or a change, do so. Try it. That's the only way you will learn how to make good wine, and also you will develop your skill set and make the wine that you want to make. And this recipe calls for 3 pounds of demerara sugar, but I think any brown dark sugar would work really well. Or you could use normal granulated sugar, but I think the nuttiness and the caramel flavour and aroma of brown sugar is going to work really well with this wine. And it's what the traditional recipe calls for. So I'm going to pour in 3 pounds of demerara sugar. Good stuff, good stuff. It's looking fantastic in the bucket. Next up, we need to add a gallon of boiling water. Cover those potatoes, cover the raisins, cover the orange and lemon juice, and cover the wheat. Awesome. So to put the kettle on and start pouring over a gallon of water. Right then, the water kettle's just boiled, so we need to pour over the gallon of boiling water. So says the recipe. But I'm only going to pour over 2 litres of boiling water, then top it up with cold water, because I don't want to cook the potatoes, and I'm going to top up the rest of the 5 litres using cold water. That way I can put the yeast in sooner and I don't have to wait as long for that 5 litres of boiling water to cool down. Once your liquid has come down to a nice room temperature, you want to be adding your yeast. Back in the day when this recipe was written, chances are they would have used a bread yeast or a general purpose wine yeast. None of these fancy varieties of yeast strains were around. So I'm going to be adding a general purpose wine yeast. Just give it a shake in and let it do its thing. It is smelling really divine already. So now you want to put a lid on your bucket and let this stand for 3, 4, 5 days. Fantastic. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be brilliant. So I'll be back in 3 days or 5 days and we'll strain it out together. Get rid of those potatoes to the compost heap and see how the flavour has become. This wine does need quite a while to mature. At least a year, I'm going to say. So make it now. Make it today. Then the future you will thank you for making this present in a year's time. And the future me will see you in 5 days in a second now. Figure that one out. And we're back. 3 days have passed. The potato wine, the Cumberland Brandy, the poor man's brandy, is looking amazing in the bucket. It's hissing, it's lively, there's bubbles coming up to the surface, and it's looking brilliant. I can't wait to try this wine in a year or so. It's going to be awesome. What we need to do today is transfer the liquid away from the potatoes, the raisins, the wheat, and the orange that went into it, and put all of that liquid into a clean, sanitised demijohn. So let's, first of all, have a look at the wine. Smells amazing. Come and have a look. There are countless ways of removing the liquid from the wheat and the raisins and things. Use whatever you have to hand. Sieves, colanders, cheesecloths, you name it, ladies' tights, they can all really help you. So I'm going to be using a system of a colander first of all to remove all the big bits and then pass it through either some tights or some cheesecloth. Depends whatever is closest to me at the moment. I have a whole pile of stuff that I use. All this grain and all the raisins are going to be amazing to add to your compost heap. That's one of the beauties of winemaking. All the leftovers go back into the compost, into the soil, which in turn makes your fruit and veg grow better for you to make more wine from. And now I have the bulk of the big bits and most of the raisins out. I'm going to try and just pour it through a pair of tights into the demijohn. Good stuff. I find that 5 litre water bottles and a tonic water bottle make the perfect combination to help you filter. Then simply put your tights into the tonic water bottle and pour things through. And this is the stage where it goes everywhere normally. As predicted, it went everywhere. Always does, so try and cover the floor if you're in the kitchen with the cloth. Catch any drips, any splashes, it'll save the wife turning you off later. The wine will clear, it will brighten up, it will gain a lovely sparkle, but you need to give it time. The next step is to put the airlock in, set it aside in a warm place to finish fermenting. This wine is going to throw a lot of sediment, so you want to rack it off every time you notice that there's a medium layer of sediment in the bottom of the demijohn. I am going to be making some videos about how to rack your wines and aftercare of the wines once you've gone past this stage of the recipe. And I'm going to put them into a playlist called Winemaking 101, where I cover a load of tips, tricks, and I answer the fundamental, basic winemaking questions in under 2 minutes. So why don't you check it out, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Have fun now.